this session, and after we're done tonight, I'm going to post it on the authority's YouTube channel, and I'll link it from the Woods Hole Terminal Reconstruction landing page that's on our website. Also, Falmouth Community TV has asked for the recording, so they'll have it as well. So, sorry, a couple people are still coming in here, so I'm going to let them in before I keep going. Okay, so as many of you know, this is the first of really 4 forums we're going to have this year on the design phase for the Woods Hole, the landside portion of the Woods Hole project. We're going to have 2 forums that are being held during the schematic design phase, which we're in right now. This is the first of those 2, and then we'll have 2 more during the design development phase, which will be in the latter half of the year. I want to let you all know this is not a public board meeting tonight. It's a forum for conversation, but there won't be any votes taken tonight. So it's not a legally noticed board meeting. We will have 2 opportunities for questions and answers, one during the middle of the session when we get through a certain portion of it, and then again at the end. And then also we do have an email address that we established several years back for written comments. That's whterminalfeedback@steamshipauthority.com. You can also email me directly or Bob Davis, of course. All right, go. A couple stragglers here I'm letting in. So just a brief review of where we've been to date. This is obvious. We've obviously gone through many versions of the terminal design before we got to this point. Back in November 2019, the board approved the 1-story terminal and 2-story utility building concept and the locations of both of those buildings. That was in the latter part of 2019. We're now in the schematic design phase of the project. That was delayed by COVID-19, obviously, as many things were. That phase, along with the design development phase, will be done this year, and then we expect construction bid documents to be issued in 2022 with the general goal of starting construction on this phase sometime in 2023. So with that very brief introduction, I am going to turn it over to Chris Iwerks and Leanne Davis, and they're going to run through the presentation. Chris, Leanne, it's over to you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, just a moment while I share the screen. Did that work?
You did. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this. As Sean said, this is the first of 4 public presentations we'll be having, or conversations. With Leanne and I tonight, we also have Carlos de Souza with Garcia Galusca de Souza, who are our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers on the project. Nate Russell with GZA Environmental for site design and traffic, and IBI placemaking. Rick Williams is our landscape architect. And the 3 of them are hidden in boxes around the screen, but if topics come up during the Q&A sessions, they are available to answer questions. So next.
Chris, I'm sorry, real quick. One thing I did forget to mention is that as we will have 2 Q&A sessions, I'll ask you, everyone who's on the call, to hold your questions until that point. You might have noticed by now that you're not able to turn on your audio or your video at this point. I will enable those features during the Q&A session, but I wanted Chris and Leanne to be able to give their presentation first, and then we'll have conversation. So those will be enabled when we get to that public comment period.
All right.
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
So the objective of this is to have an open dialogue with stakeholders to answer questions related to the project design, discuss design criteria and objectives, and to importantly listen to public comments and input that you will have. And these are the milestones that we'll be making presentations 40 and 90% of both schematic design and design development phases. Next. So these are the 6 topics we're going to go over. We're going to do the first 3 first, and then take a pause and discuss those, and then go into net zero energy, terminal building, utility building in the final segment. So the first part is going to be an overview of the basis of design and site circulation, as well as Cocoons Park. So next slide. So our basis of design document is really a technical criteria document to lay out what we're trying to achieve from a criteria perspective. And there were 6 major components to that. One was developing project service life for all of the major components that we're putting into the project, confirming the building and site program. For the most part, the building and site program has not changed. There have only been a few minor things which we'll point out as we go along that are changes, but room sizes and building sizes have not changed. It contains design criteria for all disciplines. And then we have a new section, of course, on coronavirus criteria as that affects building design, resiliency criteria, which is related to being in a flood zone, and sustainable design criteria. And Lean's going to talk real briefly about 2 of these topics, coronavirus and sustainable design.
So as Chris mentioned, during the basis of design stage, we conducted a review with our design team of public health design recommendations, standards, and some industry best practices. And based on that survey, we've identified criteria for the new building that we're intending to use to promote healthy spaces and to reduce the risk of transmissible disease in the building in the future. So some of the strategies that we'll be employing are air filtration and smart ventilation management strategies, including UVC is one of the options, one of the technologies we'll be looking at. In addition, we'll be looking to use touch-free and easily cleanable antimicrobial surfaces generally throughout the building wherever feasible. And the public restrooms were a key target for this effort. And so we'll be developing the public restrooms using touch-free fixtures, easily cleaned surfaces, and full height partitions with dedicated air. Additionally, the restrooms are laid out to enable distancing if need be and one-way circulation. We also have the interior circulation paths in the building organized to enable one-way circulation and separation between staff and public spaces. And you'll see that later in the presentation as we go through the terminal building plan. We also went through sustainable design initiatives with the Steamship Authority, and we've focused in on a couple of key objectives for the project. One of which is we will be pursuing LEED certification, and the target certification level is going to be determined as the design details develop. In addition, we'll be pursuing LEED Zero Energy certification, and that's something that we'll go into in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. But in short, it's essentially the goal will be for all energy required by both buildings and the site itself will be generated on site.
So this is the site plan that's showing cars, buses, and truck movements in different colors, and I'll walk through those in a minute. But I start by saying that the general layout of the component parts are not changed from where they were previously. But I will point out some of the adjustments we've made to the overall plan. And I would start with the bike park. We did have a 100 bike capacity park in the northwest corner of the site, which is called Cocoons Park. And we were asked to take a look at possibility of moving that bike parking to the rear of the site. And so we've done that. We've located the bike parking along the east edge along Railroad Avenue. As Railroad rises up, it stays low. And the layout of bike racks through that zone, we've are showing right now a double loaded layer of racks, which can hold a little bit over 200 bikes. So where the previous design had 100 bikes, this now has 200. And we know from the temporary terminal that with bike racks that the SSA has, the 100 capacity bike racks are not enough during the summer. So this will be an improvement over that. The other thing I'd point out is you see two blue arrows on either side of the terminal. Those indicate the entrances to the terminal. So we now have central vestibules on both sides. And we have an entrance on, importantly, on the east side that faces the buses and all the vehicles that are out there. And it's a much more easily identifiable way to get into the building. The cars that come into the site have changed a little bit as they drive in on the right-hand side, come past the security booth. All vehicles will make a right turn or 180. And we still have the short-term parking, angled parking along the side there. And as you drive past that, there are the vehicle queuing lanes arrayed as they have been for some time. And as a vehicle moves further to the north, there's a right turn that goes back to the temporary, or not temporary, but the remote parking lot. And then vehicles coming to the end of that lane make a left turn, and that is where we have pickup and drop off zone next to the bike park. And then finally exiting that loop is a right turn out onto Railroad Avenue. You'll see a little orange loop towards the upper right of this drawing. That indicates the van that the SSA uses to shuttle people back to that remote parking lot. So there's a place to pick up and drop off people at a curb, and then room for a U-turn to make it back underneath the bridge. Cars coming out of the queue can come, this is operational decisions as to which way it makes the most sense, but they can come out to the left and feed around the back side of the buses, or feed to the right around the front of the buses. And then exiting is either out Railroad Avenue or back up Cowdery and over the Crane Street Bridge. The buses have shifted a little bit. They are now up against the terminal plaza. So getting on and off a bus is a matter of walking across a short crosswalk to get to the plaza and then up into the building. So they don't have to cross a travel lane or pickup drop-off lane that we had previously. And so this will make for a much more, I think, comfortable and safe passage for people arriving by bus. And the buses have a pretty simple radius turn into those slots, and then the same coming out onto Railroad Avenue. And then finally, truck staging, we have that in pairs, 4 pairs of truck staging spots. And Nate Russell has done a series of tests for turning radiuses to show how trucks can make it into each of these transfer bridges to make their way onto ferries. And the last thing that on this site that or 2 more things I would say, you'll see some blue rectangles. And Leon, I don't know if you can show it with the arrow, but above the bike park, there's a blue rectangle. And then down on the southern edge of the vehicle queue staging area, there's another one. And then there's a 3rd rectangle that is in the employee parking lot. And what those represent are solar arrays that are column supported. So they're just above vehicle height. So they're not very high, but we've located those out there in conjunction with the solar array that we have over the terminal building to provide us with a zero net energy strategy, which Leon will talk about in a little while. The last piece is the Cocoons Park. Having moved the bicycle parking to the northern edge of the site, we now have essentially an open, unprogrammed oasis. It's out of the way. It's not in the midst of traffic. And we have a few slides to show what it used to be. So before we started, and the original terminal was off to the left, there was a loading bridge that was seldom used. And there was a landscape buffer between this, what was really used as a taxi staging area. And all that's gone at this point. Everything in that picture is removed, so we have a blank slate. We did save those bronze plaques of fish for reuse.
And the granite blocks, I believe, as well.
Okay. And the next slide is a planned depiction of what the bike park had looked like. So this was the bike rack layout. It was kind of sequestered within a landscape garden on all four sides. There was a seating area and walkway along the bulkhead. But now that we no longer have those bike racks and that need, it's an open question as to what this space should be. And this is a blow up of the bike parking area that's moved to the Railroad Avenue edge of the site. And some pictures of what that edge looks like. So there will be a new low retaining wall running along that edge, by the way. So Rick Williams and his team have done some preliminary studies, but we realized that what we really have to do first is ask some questions. And some of the things we know is that the waterfront walk is a very important feature, and having access to it is critical. The Cocoons Park piece, in part, is going to be a connection. It's going to allow people to go from Luscombe and Railroad to the waterfront. There's also the need for that park to connect across over to the Plaza. And we have a need to provide an accessible route from the sidewalk at the intersection up to the Plaza. And it's about a 3 to 4 foot height differential. So it has to be done carefully and according to what are legal slopes. And then the other red lines in here depict primary pedestrian pathways from the buses leading across to the north and south platforms, out to the bike parking and the pickup drop-off area, and then the central walkway that leads to the terminal building central entrance. And the last piece that's showing on this diagram is the dog park, which is a small park area that will be out on the far eastern edge of the site before you go under the bridge. So we're going to pause at this point to give you a chance to ask questions, make comments, give us some input. The kinds of things that suggested themselves to us. One is that what might this be programmatically? What are some landscape ideas? What are desired park elements? Are there other important considerations we should be thinking about? We also asked SSA for their input on what's important to them. And these 6 points are what we heard, that one, it be visually open, that it be a place for people to be able to sit by the water. It's really the only place you can do that that's out of the way of traffic. They don't see a need for a fence enclosure. They do have a need for it to provide an accessible path to the terminal plaza. It needs to be easily maintained, and pedestrian safety is an important component of this, because people coming from the park to the plaza or to the waterfront have the potential to be crossing in front of exiting vehicles. So that's all I'm going to say on this first section on the site, and I'll turn it back to Sean for community
Okay.
at this point.
Leanne, if you could pause your screen, turn off your screen sharing for the time being. So what I'd like is anyone who would like to comment on the Cocoons Park concept, or has any questions on what's been presented so far, please hit the raise your hand icon on Zoom, which I'm sure we're all painfully aware of by now. And I will allow you to, I will start bringing you over. And I saw Tom Crane coming in first, so I will ask him to unmute himself.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the flow of traffic coming in from the main road. Your schematics show 3 lanes of traffic coming in from the main road across Crane Street down Cowdrey Road. It seems from this, other than a tiny little marking of exit at the bottom, is the intent of the Steamship Authority to seek approval for Crane Street and Cowdrey Road to be expanded for 3 lanes of traffic and only one way?
I'll take a shot at answering that. The depiction, the color lines that depict the different vehicles coming in is not literally lanes. Those are just showing the 3 types of vehicles. There are 2 lanes already, one on either side of the entrance booth. So cars will continue to come in on the right-hand side, trucks and buses on the other side, leaving a 3rd lane for exiting. So there's nothing's envisioned that would need to change the current 2-way traffic on Cowdrey.
And what about Crane Street? That looks like a one-way road now.
No, it's
It's turned into a one-way road.
No, it's 2 ways.
And it looks like you've also eliminated the pedestrian walkway along Crane Street. Is that correct?
No,
Okay, I mean, that's what you show.
it's a diagram. It's a diagram to show the way the 3 types of vehicles go into the site. It's not a diagram of the layout of sidewalks or actual markings on the street. So it doesn't change from how it is today with sidewalks and lanes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. I will, Ellen Tully, you're next. You're up. Nope, hang on. Nope. Sorry, I think I clicked shift as you unmuted yourself, Ellen. Try again.
How about that?
There you go. Sorry about that. I think we clicked at the same time. Go ahead.
Okay. My comment is on pedestrian safety. And from the little reading that I did, or from some reading that I've done, the thing that produces pedestrian safety is slow speeds of the traffic so that they can adjust to whatever the crazy pedestrians do. So I recommend everyone enter and exit at slow speeds when you think about pedestrian safety.
Thank you. Next up is Arden Edwards. Arden, you can unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, great. Thank you. In the late 80s, when the Steamship Authority was going to take out the plan that was there, I offered an alternative, and they were going to put in a new park. I offered an alternative, and they liked it better, and it was built in the late 80s. Now, you did mention a landscape architect who will be working on the park. I hope that this architect is knowledgeable about historical sites and interpretation. You mentioned 2 items that were saved from the second Sam Cahoon Park. The first one had an anchor that was donated by Dan Clark. That was in the late 60s. Is the anchor still available is one of my questions. My other question is, there was a bronze sign with a depiction of the fish market, Sam Cahoon Fish Market, and a fishing schooner from Edgartown, and history about the fish market. that had been damaged slightly by a little snow plow in the park. And my question is, has it been fixed so it can be reinstalled? The bronze plaques, fish plaques that were in the sidewalk were made by the same artist who made plaques for the waterfront park. And I highly suggest having your, the new landscape architect look at this other part and other places in town to try to bring things together, to have some homogeneity. Some of my ideas about landscaping are to use native plants. They use less water, they're less maintenance. Will this new park be about twice as big as the Sam Cahoon Park? And I hope that the granite will be used for a sitting wall, and there might be a possibility that the town of Falmouth or the Steamship Authority would have more granite to donate for more sitting wall. Another element is good lighting. And I'm sure there will be some signs to tell people where they should take their dogs. In December of 2017, Ted Fitzell, Betsy Gladfelter, and I went to talk with Bob Davis. And I told him about the history of the horse watering troughs. There was one put in there in 1903 to bring water from Long Pond to the steamships. A small group of people are looking into the possibility of having these watering troughs returned to Woods Hole. If we do that and are able to get the watering trough that was in Woods Hole, would the Steamship Authority consider having this trough incorporated into the design of the new park? There were actually two watering troughs. One was in Woods Hole and the other one was, I believe, on the green in front of the Congregational Church. This feature would be enjoyed by residents, and lots of visitors would see it up close. Dogs would drink from the lower ring like they did in the early 1900s. And we think it's a great idea. And if there are people who would like to help with this effort, they can contact Ted Fitzell, myself, or the Woods Hole Historical Museum. There's one other thing I would like to mention. I live on the Woods Hole Road, so I'm well aware of the noise and traffic and the congestion, the parking issues, etc., especially in the summertime. But there's something that I would like to say to the Steamship Authority, that not too long ago, when they made a big change to the whistles on the vessels, that was the return of the steam whistles for them. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but someone was persistent enough to follow through. And I thank them for doing it every day. In fact, I thank them probably every day because I hear them every day. And so I'd say, let's give our best effort to figure out a way to get the watering trough back in Woods Hole where it was first placed. Thank you.
Thank you, Arden. I see several people in the chat are having issues finding the raise your hand icon. I believe that if you hover your mouse towards the bottom, there should be a participants button and you can hit it there. If you're having problems, you can feel free to submit your questions via the chat window as well, and we'll get to you. Next up is,
You want to answer anything?
well, there's not, all the questions so far are how do I find the,
Oh, no.
okay, well, let me get to Bill first, sorry. Bill, you're up.
Thank you for moving the bike parking back so that the bicycles dismount before they go across the traffic. That's a major safety improvement. I'm very happy about that. The solar canopy over the bikes is going to shade that green edge between Railroad Ave and the bikes is actually a very lovely green space. There's all kinds of stuff growing in there, and I know you're going to cut some of it back with your retaining wall, but I think that the plants in there should be sort of arm's length plants. Maybe they're as random as what's in there now, but the solar array there, I think it should be shifted so it's over next to the other solar array so that the sun actually shines on those plants and they actually get a chance to grow. That would be lovely. And I think it's great that the dog park is separate from the bikes because some things don't go together. The buses, I still think are on the wrong side of the terminal. I think they should be on the seaward side of the terminal so that people coming off the boats get right to the buses, people getting off the buses get right to the boats. They're not going to go into the terminal, most of them. Some of them might go in and go to the bathroom, but I think most of them are going to go right onto the boats. And I don't know that you need 3 lanes of buses. I've never seen the buses be 3 wide, but I'm not sure about that. And the waterfront park sounds great. There's a lot of opportunities there. The horse watering troughs might already been used at the new water filtration plant. I'm not sure, but thank you for the water park, the Cocoons Park back. That's a great improvement. Thank you. Done.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Nat Trumbull, you're up.
I have 3 sets of questions about the site circulation, please. And the first concerns trucks. And one question, will there ever be a need for trucks to back up like they do regularly today with their backup beeping? Will trucks ever have to pass into the passenger car lanes, those 16 lanes? Will they ever end up back there like they do today? And will trucks continue to wait and park on Cowdrey Road, just adjacent with the employee parking, just below the employee parking lot, like they do today? Just a general question about the count of slots you have for trucks. The MV Woods Hole carries 10 trucks, it says on your website. I only see 8. These are presumably 53-foot trucks. Still doesn't look like enough space on the terminal without you're going on to town, basically parking on a town road. And also related to trucks. On some summer weekdays, more than 600 trucks, or at least vehicles classified as trucks by the steamship, pass through the Woods Hole terminal. What is the maximum number of trucks per day or per hour, if you wish, that the new terminal configuration would allow? And then finally, my third question, Massachusetts regulates emissions from cars and trucks. Will there be any modeling or projection of anticipated air emissions from such a large concentration of cars and especially trucks at the Woods Hole terminal? Thank you.
Chris, did you want to address any of those, or are we just taking note? Are you
I've noted, well, I think those are all operational questions.
want to address any of them at this point, or?
The only one, the issue, I will only, on the programmatic side, the brief we've had has been for 8 truck parking spaces. So if there's a need for 10, that's not what the program has said. So
I'll just add to that. What's shown in the site plan currently is 8 WB67 trucks, which are the long 72 or 75-foot long trucks.
53-foot plus cab, I'll bet. Yeah. How would I receive answers to these questions? I thought this concerned site circulation.
Well, Bob is here. He's going to go back to some of Arden's questions first, and then he'll come around to yours. So, you want to slide?
Yeah. So if Arden still is on board, in terms of the It was mentioned about the sidewalk plaques. We have saved those. We saved the granite blocks, the granite stones. The anchor is still actually down in Woods Hole. Right now, it's off to the side on the hill there. The other bronze plaque, which, as you mentioned, is damaged. We're looking at whether that can be repaired or whether it's going to have to be redone. But that is on our list of things to do. I think the native plantings and the water, I think that'd be a Chris and Liam question there. The lighting, of course, is an issue we'll be looking to address for not only the Cocoons Park, but the site. And yes, we did talk about those troughs, and I think someone else just mentioned that they're actually out on Gifford Street at the town's water department there. So it'd be a matter of the town wanted to reassign one of those. So. I think that was it for I think Bill had comments on terms of the solar, where it's going to be whether it should be shifted so that way any plantings on the hill from Railroad Ave was there, the dog park, and in terms of the 3 lanes for the buses. We have not only our own buses, but we have intercity buses such as Peter Pan that come down. And we also have the Regional Transit Authority buses that come down. So we're all leaving at on different schedules. So that's why there's a separate lanes for each one of those. So that way we don't have a bottleneck of vehicles that need to move when the other ones that are in front of them don't have to leave yet, aren't scheduled to leave yet. So. And then I think in terms of Mr. Trumbull's questions, I think all efforts are being made so that way the trucks don't have to back up. That's not to say that they won't on occasion, but we'll endeavor to minimize any of that. I think the turning radiuses, I think we'll be showing that later on. I think it is so that way on occasion we may have them swing around and stage in the vehicle, in the car staging area as well. And I think the plan is to be having the truck staging on our property. I think you talk about 600 trucks per day. Those aren't, just for clarifications, that's not all tractor trailer vehicles. Those include the smaller, smaller classifications as well, I believe. So as we've stated all along, we were, the terminal plans are done based on what our existing, traffic levels were. We weren't building in for a lot of growth. And then I guess the last one was the air emissions, and yes, we'll have appropriate signage up in terms of the regulations regarding trucks for the idling and how long they can idle and the like. So.
Okay, next is Francis Pitts.
Hi, I'd appreciate it if Chris would address the question of pick up and drop off. If I wanted to come and pick somebody up or drop someone off, what would my path of travel be in a car? Do I go around the back of the queuing area to that pickup drop off area? How do I do that?
Yes, that's correct. Drive around the back of the queuing area to the north, and then there's a zone of pickup and drop off all along that edge.
Thank you.
Okay, next would be Jonathan Goldman.
When I saw the bronze little fish that you intend to keep for the upgrading of the park, first of all, as Tom Crane has noted in the chat, don't call it the waterfront park. There is a waterfront park, and it's the MBL's. It's around the corner. Those fish, those cast fish, I wanted to take a second to just suggest that you come up with some representative group that can help determine the programmatic set that you would have there. When you're going to bring in the arts, for example, I would have an arts representative or an artist to have some kind of input on that regard. In addition to the historical museum's imprimatur of whatever historical elements programmatically should be displayed. I mean, I think it would be good to integrate the cultural activities of this little village into an active part of that park. That doesn't mean taking individual, what I used to call plunk sculptures, you know, equestrian sculptures, which as we now know are largely being removed. Let's think another 100 years and let's think what kind of cultural touchstones we want to have in a design that has a direct integration into the park. Imposing anything even in a small way and not maintaining it, like you said, one of the bronze plaques has been damaged. I mean, this is part of the problem of these designs, is that the maintenance becomes onerous, and we want to make sure that it's kept up. So this isn't really a question per se, but when I saw those things, they constitute public art, basically. And the integration of public art into public spaces or semi-public spaces, I think should be thought out. I think it should be articulated. I think it should reflect many of the different cultural touchstones that we have and we all share as people of Woods Hole. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Marie Larson, you are next. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, that's the right it's Lawson if you're saying it really correctly, but Larson is how I say it. And
Thank you.
that's not easy with a Boston accent, saying that R. So thank you so much for doing this. It looks like there's been a tremendous amount of work put into this plan. And I commend you for all of that. I don't know how much input you've had from a group called the Woods Hole Permit Parkers. And I'm wondering, is there going to be safe pedestrian access from the ferry to the bus to the back lot? And does that bus have to be so far away? You've given the bikes a space for 200 bikes, but we go on and off island all year round. Medical appointments are oftentimes the reason, or family visits, whatever. But when you're carrying bags on the way back, that's a long way to walk. And I'm wondering why the back lot is not a part of this plan, and what other plans to improve that lot. We have not even seen brush cutting, let alone good lighting for the nighttime. I sit in my car at night in the when I'm down there by myself. It's very, very lonely. And if the bus isn't right there, I sit in my car with my headlights on because I don't want to get out and stand in a dark parking lot. So I'm wondering, why is the back lot not a part of the plan? And are you planning any improvements for it? And how can we get the bikers to understand in the summer? We need better signage somehow to impress on the bikers that it's a shared path. It's not just a bike path. I've been yelled at. I've been screamed at. The bus drivers get it full barrel from bikers. It's very challenging in the summer to go in and out of the back lot with people biking on both sides with kids, and it's just very touch and go. So I'd like to hear something about the back lot. I'm not the only one. There are a lot of us permit parkers talk to each other, but I don't know if anybody else is on this meeting. So can anybody address that?
Yeah, so this is Bob Davis again. So in regards to the back lot, that's not our property. We leased that from the town. Currently, we have a 1-year lease that was negotiated at the end of last year. We'll be looking to reopen the negotiations with the town on a longer term for that property, and whether there needs to be some improvements. I know typically in the spring we do go down there with and do some clearing and cleaning up and the sand and the fencing along there. So we'll be doing that. I think your first comment pertained to the distance. While I think the site circulation plan has the shuttle bus once it comes out from underneath the bridge making immediate U-turn. We have discussed that the opportunity also exists that they would be able to go up the pick up and drop off lane, circle around in front, and then make a big circle and go back to the back lot. So that still is a method that we can be utilizing the shuttle to the back lot.
Okay, and I really find it hard to accept the fact that the Steamship Authority claims they just rent it. So whose responsibility is it you should go down there and see how bad it is in the summer with all the brush growing in. Everybody's car is into the brush. And it's like, it's a very neglected part. I don't know what the town's plans are. I see that Catherine Wilson is here. Thank you. Maybe Catherine, you have something to say about who is responsible. The Steamship Authority is always passing the buck to the town, and it looks like the town doesn't really do much of anything down there.
It's my understanding that the town does own the property, and there's been a long-standing relationship with Steamship Authority. Bob, is it possible that we can coordinate better with the town so that some of those issues are addressed?
Yeah, I wasn't implying that it's the town's responsibility. The lease, we've had this lease for a number of years. It's just the current term is only a 1-year term. But in terms of it, we'll be looking at what improvements need to be to the lot. We do have our people go back there and clean out, and in that we'll have to look to see what improvements we need to be making in terms of cleaning it up even further. So.
Okay, thank you. Can I add one more thing? We've been permit parkers for about 40 years, and we've seen a lot of growth and a much greater use of the Shining Sea bike path has become an important piece here. But let's also remember that the town of Falmouth only owns the back lot. They don't own all the access over the Steamship Authority property. So we need to develop a little more of a beneficial relationship for the people who are paying a lot of money, a lot of which is going to the town of Falmouth to park down there. And I think it was about maybe 25 years ago that we had a proposal for the Steamship Authority to move the permit parkers up to Palmer Ave and make that a lot for day trippers, which I was on a committee with a couple of other people, a couple of people from Falmouth and a couple of people from the Vineyard, and we did a survey. And I would hope that perhaps you should consider getting a very small group of people together to discuss this, to get some input from the permit parkers, because there are simple, easy things to do, and the brush cutting is not being done properly. And I don't know why. I haven't asked. I don't even know who to talk to about it. But that would really, I think it matters. I think that back lot is part of the Steamship Authority. We pay them a lot annually for the privilege of parking down there. Thank you. We appreciate that the town is still leasing it, and the town is making a very good amount of money on that lot. So can we please have some attention paid to that? It is part of the Steamship Authority's programs.
Thank you, Marie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oops. What's this?
Jenny, you're sharing your screen. Can you not do that? And it's in French, so. Okay, thank you. Dan Doyle, if we did get a note, but we'll keep moving here. Just got a couple more people with their hands up. Dan?
Hi, Sean. Yeah, thanks. And sorry for being late to this meeting. I think one of the local papers bungled the meeting ID, or else I did that wonderfully myself, one or the other. So sorry if I missed this. I think I read recently that the steamship is at least planning to take on a feasibility study for long-term planning, what it would involve to electrify the fleet. And I just want to applaud you guys for that. I think that's really great. And on one hand, you don't know what you don't know when it comes to, potential design elements that might, better enable the shoreside infrastructure piece, should you decide to pursue in that direction. But on the other hand, I'm just wondering if there are any low-hanging fruit that can be taken into account with this design that would, sort of allow that seismic infrastructure investment at some point, again, if you chose to go that direction, to happen more seamlessly. And I imagine, that's been a conversation internally with you guys. I'm just wondering if you're able to share any of that thinking.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we bifurcated the presentation tonight a little bit. So we did briefly review some locations for solar on the site. And I think we're going to get a little bit more into that in the second half. So if you could hang on to that, and if we don't address it more directly in the second half of the presentation, we'll come back to it afterwards.
Okay, very, very good. Sorry to be out of sequence. Thank you.
No, you're fine. Thank you. Okay, and then just to review a couple of things that have come up in the chat. Some comments more than questions, but we do have where all of them will be recorded for posterity. So we do have a note from Bill Roslansky about temporary parking for pickup drop off for bus passengers being too far away from each other. Bob Morris noting Representative Fernandez letters about lighting. Tom Crane noting about light pollution as well. And then Nat Trumbull asked who's responsible for picking up litter in the back quad. Is that us?
That'd be us.
That would be us. And then Bob Morris noting a controlled curb cut needing to be addressed. Luscombe is one way to the spot where the kiosk officer directing traffic formerly sat. The plan shows at least 4 lanes entering Railroad Luscombe intersection plus a lane coming out of slip 3. Not necessarily 4 lanes of traffic. I think it's just 4 arrows for illustrations purposes, but your point is made, is noted.
Zozo, you want to come up?
And then I think that a concern about traffic from the staging area to slip 2, especially as it crosses over pedestrian areas. And right now it's already appears to be an accident waiting to happen between pedestrians and cars entering and exiting the ferries. That is something I know we've talked about, that pedestrian flow, certainly. So that is something we're keenly keeping an eye on. So Bill Benno, you just put your hand up. Unmute.
Yes, I didn't follow exactly the question about the passenger pickup and drop off. I was wondering if you could put the image back up on the screen that you could illustrate where that occurs. It sounds like that occurs up where the bike parking is.
If everyone could not share their screen so that Liam can share his screen, please. Liam, can you put up that?
Yep.
Again, please. So I'm sorry, Bill, what was your?
So the question is if I'm coming in and dropping off someone or picking them up, what is my route of travel? And where do I drop off the passenger or pick them up?
So Leanne, do you want to run the cursor around the path? So one way is to come into the site, which if you do that, you're coming down Cowdrey and making a 180 into the back, passing by the temporary. Now the temporary parking is one possible place to stop, pick somebody up. Has the time limits on that parking we haven't determined yet, and there's 2 accessible spaces. You then circle around the back of the vehicle queue, make a left turn, and there's a parallel parking zone in front of the bicycles, and there's a sidewalk in front of the bicycles as well. So there's an actual physical drop-off space.
Okay, so 2 questions. One is at the southern part of that where it goes by the staging booth. Is that gonna, or let's see, you got the entry booth and then you have a staging booth, the one on the right side there. That's not gonna be a bottleneck for vehicles who are gonna get in line for staging versus people who are just driving through to drop off or pick someone up.
Right.
And then at the north part, or where people are actually, where you have the loading zone, is that why the solar canopy is there to help provide some shelter? Because that's a long ways away from the structure and the boats for people to be walking that distance in the elements.
Well, yeah, placing the solar canopy there does give some protection to the sidewalk and part of the bike racks, not all of it. And part of the reason it's there is that it's as far out of the way as you can make it. There's not really room to put it out in the middle of the vehicular queue.
The canopy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just kind of like the earlier comment about the shuttle bus there looping around. That's more than twice as far as the current shuttle. It is to get the current shuttle. And then my last question, there was a response from the shuttle, possibly might be able to come back down closer to the boats. What course would that take? And how would it, I couldn't follow what loop it might take.
So if it were to make a big loop, it would go straight westward on the, where the drop off is. Instead of making a U-turn, it would go straight and then make a left in front of the vehicle queue and then make a left again where all the other vehicles are coming into the site. So it would essentially be one great big,
okay.
It's a big counterclockwise loop.
Okay, I didn't realize there was two-way traffic there in front of the parking, in front of the staging.
Yeah, for the most part, there isn't any traffic there, but the van, if it had to, could do that.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one last question. What about luggage racks? And the luggage, what's their, are they on both sides of the terminal?
We have a more detailed, it doesn't show up on this one, but we have luggage pickup on the plot at the, was it the western edge of the plaza? And then drop-offs are down at the, closer to the bulkhead.
Thank you.
One question just came in from the chat, and then I think we can move on, about space for taxis and rideshare, limos, that kind of thing. And wondering if we are allocating enough space for all of those. Or where those vehicles would go in the first place, I suppose, as well. Chris or Lane, can you address that?
Yeah, well, the spaces we have for everybody that's in a car that wants to come onto the site is limited. So we have the drop-off space across the north. We have the angled parking on the south side. We have not talked about, you know, what would happen if you need more, you need more capacity than that. That's the capacity we have right now.
Okay. Why don't we, Rich Salzberg, I see your hand up, but I'm going to hold media questions and group them at the end if I could, and I'm not giving an option, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and disable everyone's ability to unmute themselves. And Chris and Leon, if you guys want to move on to the second half of the presentation. Catherine, I see your chat, and we'll come back to you first after the second half of this.
So in the next portion of the presentation, we're going to focus in on the buildings in a little more detail. As we mentioned earlier, before we do that, one of the objectives we now have for the project is we're going to be pursuing LEED Zero energy certification. And so net zero is basically an approach where we will be combining energy efficiency with on-site renewable energy production.
To answer him.
So to meet this objective, we'll be working to balance the envelope performance, energy use reduction strategies, which will include, you know, efficient HVAC systems. We're looking at geothermal as one of the options there, and energy efficient lighting, just to name a few options that we'll be including. And those will be balanced with on-site photovoltaic energy production. So what we're currently showing on the site plan and what's pictured here in this site diagram is 4 solar arrays, and we have a preliminary estimate on the amount of energy production we can get based on these quantities. So by locating solar on the terminal building and then over the bike park, at the short-term vehicle parking, and in the employee lot, we currently estimate that we have enough to achieve the net zero objective, but that is going to hone in as we move through the design process and do more detailed energy modeling. The other thing I'll just note is that we're not anticipating any solar on the utility building. It doesn't appear to be a good candidate for that due to shading from some neighboring trees. So the terminal building has been informed by basically everything we've been discussing so far today. To orient you, on the sheet here, the east is down sheet, and the west, which would be the water side, is up sheet. So the bus drop off and vehicle queue would be down on the lower side of the building, the way it's laid out. So the back of house spaces in this plan are shaded, and the public spaces are shown in white. And the building plan has only seen some minor modifications since we had it last in the concept design, primarily due to the relocation of the entries to the east and west sides. The other thing that we've done is we've added airlock vestibules at each entry, and that's going to help us achieve our LEED and our net zero objectives. So to walk through the building quickly, when you enter the main building on the east side, the vestibule is this number 1 here. To the left are the public family restroom and the public men's and women's restrooms, which now have exits out on the south side of the building. From the entry to the right brings you to the main ticketing area or the main waiting room with the ticket desk on the south wall. And this new layout will allow for more efficient use of the space with circulation and queuing held more to the south side of the room. We also have a window wall on the north side that can be opened up seasonally to the terrace and plaza. And then moving through to the west side of the building, the west vestibule here, number 3, has the vending in it, and it exits out into a walkway that then ramps down to the north and the south back to the sidewalk levels. The staff spaces that are shaded in gray have been limited only to the uses that we need to have here in this building, and everything else is located in the utility building that we'll go through in a moment. The spaces here are offices for the terminal manager, the terminal agents, staff restrooms, which are code required, and a small break room. And then we also have mechanical spaces, which are elevated to be up above the floodplain. Looking at the elevations, you can see here the east elevation, which is the side facing the bus drop-off and vehicle queue, and the north elevation, which is the side of the building facing the plaza, the Cocoons Park, and the village. So you can see on the east elevation here, the building will be a cavity, super insulated cavity wall construction with a concrete structural backup and stone facing. And we have a flat roof as we had in the concept design. And that flat roof has periodic curbs that will support the solar array above. Additionally, we have canopies that are cantilevered off the 4 sides of the building. And as I mentioned in the plan, you can see on the north elevation, we have the operable window wall that opens the waiting room up to the plaza, the park, and the village. And so these elevations are of the west and south side. So the west side is the side of the building facing the water. And here you can see on the south elevation, we have those exits from the 2 public restrooms. And I'll just note that the windows and door assemblies are currently planned to be wood systems that will have a deployable floodproofing barrier, which is going to allow us to achieve the dry floodproofing requirement for the building. Switching over to the utility building, as we discussed earlier, the utility building is a 2-story building now. The first floor, which is pictured here, houses the operational storage spaces, which are generally organized around the main equipment storage, which is space number 8 here. And that is set flush with grade so that the Steamship Authority can drive their equipment in and out of the building. At the north end here at space number 1, this is the entry vestibule, and that has the elevator and the main stair up to the 2nd floor. And the stair is set up so that the first landing is a half of a run up so that the door on the east side is aligned with the employee parking lot for direct access. The 2nd floor houses the primary occupied spaces in the building. So arriving at the top of the stair and elevator, a main corridor brings you down to the employee locker room, which is room number 24 here. There's also an employee break room, which is 29. And then at the end of the corridor on the west is the multipurpose room. So we laid out these spaces so that the staff can see the site operations, and then storage spaces and mechanical are positioned on the east and the south sides. Moving to the elevations on the utility building, similar to the terminal building, it will be stone cavity walls with wood window and door assemblies. And the building is broken up into gable and flat roof sections. So here the north and west elevations are shown, which are the two sides that sort of face the terminal building to help orient you. And you can see the roll-up doors into the main equipment storage and oil storage spaces. And lastly, we have the east and the south elevations. So the east elevation is the side of the utility building facing the employee parking lot. It has the two entry and exit doors from the two stairs. We also will have some equipment located over here, similar to what's there now. There's a generator and an electrical transformer, which will be replaced but remain in roughly the same location. And on the south elevation, which is the side of the building that abuts the Steamship Authority's property line, we're showing a trellis green wall, which will take advantage of the southern exposure on the side, and the spaces that are lined up against this don't have a need for windows or views. So, and with that, I will hand it back over to Sean.
Okay, thank you, Chris and Leanne. All right, I swore that we would get to Catherine Bumpus's question first. She asked, what purpose does the plaza at the terminal serve? Chris or Leanne, can you address that?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What purpose does the plaza on the terminal property serve?
Well, it's a waiting area for people who are queuing for going onto a vessel.
Okay. James, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about, because in the culture there are now more than 2 or 3 genders, that labeling 2 separate rooms maybe could be better by using just toilet, a bank of toilets, just labeled toilets, and especially if there are more of them that could include a child and a caregiver, a parent and a stroller, a disabled person that isn't in a wheelchair but in a walker, just a little more room, the person with a luggage. We've been here for 40 years and we've run into the issue of what to do with luggage. So it seems as though a more culturally appropriate thing would be just toilets. Then all the genders would feel welcome, and if they were large enough, there would be reduce the waiting period, and people struggling with what to do with all their equipment. So it would reduce the lines. Our daughters report having lines for the women's, et cetera, and it's been shown, I think, and by some people that having unisex single designation, multiple room, and then the wash basins are around. Anyway, so that's our question, whether or not that's possible with the plumbing and whether or not that might be worth thinking about further. Thank you very much.
I wonder, Carlos, are you on? Do you want to reply to that?
Wait, can you stop sharing your screen? I might be able to find him a little bit better.
Yep.
I am on mute. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Possible, because there are more than 2 or 3 genders. Some people say there are now 5 genders. Would it be possible to just have toilets, not 2 large rooms with little stalls? They have private rooms with floor to ceiling toilets with maybe some more that have a little extra room for a stroller or a suitcase or a child with their parent who could be of a different gender. So it's very awkward for a parent with a child of a different gender with a stroller. 6 and 7-year-old boys don't want to go to the women's room, and 9-year-old girls don't want to go, but the parent is to the men's room, but the parent can't leave them out, doesn't feel safe just leaving them out. So having more of those family rooms or and having it unisex would improve the flow, the quickness of the flow.
Okay, thank you. From a plumbing standpoint, that's not an issue. I think, Chris, what it would be is how much space that would take up from an architectural standpoint.
Well, no, there is in the plumbing code is not doesn't see gender the same way yet.
Yeah, it's looking at fixture counts.
Yeah, we still have requirements for, even though what you say is done in other countries readily, the gender distinctions have been dropped, and you go into toilet facilities and each stall is its own thing. We're not able to do that in Massachusetts. Plumbing code doesn't permit it.
James, I will note there is a family restroom in the plan on the public side, so there is at least one option along the lines of what you discussed.
Right.
Okay, Nan Schombecker, you are next.
That's very disappointing.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the utility building having the elevator tower on the north side, because that puts it right smack in the middle of the view that those of us who live across from the steamship currently have. We lost the view completely when the current utility building was put up without anybody ever consulting us. And 2 years ago, when we saw this plan, several of us objected to having the tower on the north side of that building. Is there any way that that could be moved to the south side, which is against an embankment and wouldn't be blocking anybody's view? Because the way it's set up now, at 2 stories with a tower, we're not going to have any view at all. And I would also like to mention again about the view that the pine trees that were planted along that edge, the eastern edge of the parking area, also block everybody's view. And since they were cut down, it's been really very nice to see the harbor again. So I would like to put in a request that when you're landscaping the property, you not put in any trees that are likely to grow up and block our view. Part of the value of our property living here are the views. They're marvelous water views, and planting a tree may seem like a nice thing to do, but if it blocks a view that others were enjoying, it's not a good thing. So I'm really very upset about the tower, because 2 years ago, when this was brought up, I thought Bob said, yes, he would look into that. And here it is still on the northern side of the building. And I think it's very unfortunate design for us.
You want to speak to that, or Chris, or nobody?
Yeah. So Nan, this is Bob again. So yes, that is something that we've looked at a couple times. Chris, Liam, I forget what some of the rationale was, and if you can help me on that one.
Well, I guess I'm not completely clear on the issue here because the elevator is in the building, but there's not a tower. So there's a building that's got a sloped roof on it. And wherever you put the elevator, you still have a roof. You still have a 2-story building. So
Yes, but if you put the elevator stack on the south side, it's against an embankment and that has trees behind it. Nobody's view would be impeded in any way, whereas the way you've got it set up now, that sloped roof, slightly elevated from the rest of the building, is right smack in the middle of our view.
So what you're saying is having a roof is your issue?
Having a 2-story building plunked down in front of us is, as I said, very unfortunate. I understand you have to have a utility building, and I also understand that in trying to accommodate all of us who are objecting to a 2-story terminal building, you had to move some of the function out of the terminal and into the utility building. I understand that, but it seems to me that if there's any part of that building that's elevated over the rest of it, that it should be on the south side, because otherwise we're just completely cut off. And as I said, also, if trees get planted back where they were along the edge of the employee parking lot, that is also substantially blocking our view. And that's not just me, that's everybody at this end of Little Harbor Road, basically. There are 1, 2, 3 or 4 houses on Little Harbor Road, all of which have a nice view from their second floor, at least, over the harbor. And if the higher end of the building is on the north side, we are all going to lose a portion of the view, which, as I said, we've already lost a large portion of the view with the current shed, but I realize that can't be helped. I'm just saying it would be really nice if a 2-story building didn't make it even worse than it has to be.
And this is Sean. Bob and I just talked, and he's going to look back through his notes to review that conversation and reach out to you on this, because our memories are failing us at this point.
Yeah, no, I recall the conversation. I just, we'll work with Chris and Liam and see about what options we would have in terms of that elevator shift. But
okay,
those are the type of comments that we're hoping to hear today.
Well, I don't know if Pam Stark is on this session, but she was the one who brought it up initially, because that it would be very substantially blocking her view as well as ours. So as I say, there are a number of us that would be affected by that.
And I remember I was there, and yes, we did discuss it, and we should revisit it and talk with Chris about the options in that regard.
Thank you, Kate. I really appreciate that. I think, we all realize that there are certain needs that have to be met. And having the privilege of living here includes having to accept some of the negative aspects of being next to the Steamship Authority. I'm just trying to find a way to mitigate those negative effects as much as possible.
Thank you, Dan. Bill Roslansky. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I have a little bit of a laundry list here. So first off, I can't see any value in the opening window wall on the side of the terminal building facing the plaza. I just don't know what kind of function is going to require opening up a whole wall like that. I know they're expensive. I bet they're not that energy efficient. It doesn't seem to make sense. And then you've mentioned wood windows and doors a few times. I can't imagine the maintenance that will make those valuable in a building like this. It seems like aluminum or, vinyl or something would make a lot more sense. And then there's a kind of a bigger issue about the canopies, which make the building look very lovely and floaty and light, but they're so far off the ground that they're not going to do any good. The rain typically comes in at about a 45-degree angle around here. It's driven by wind, and those canopies won't keep anything dry. It'll just be soaking wet right all the way to the building. So I think they're too high. I don't get the clerestory windows way up high in the building. I know it makes the roof kind of float on top of this structure, but it seems like a lot of energy and expense for a building that people are only in for a short amount of time. And this is just a personal thing. I don't love the round windows. I'd rather have more bigger, squarer windows down low that I could just glance out of and not even notice the building. Well, that's just me. I'm not wild about the round windows. Major improvement eliminating the swing doors that you had on an earlier design. Those things would just knock people on their keisters when the wind caught them. So that's really, thank you for getting rid of those. That's a big improvement. And this is coming along. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. Catherine, I guess you're next.
I'd like to thank all of you for hosting this and letting us give input yet again. We've been at this for a number of years now. I can't say that this plan really makes me happy or excited as looking at the building. The comments that I've heard from a number of people say that they don't think that it would be welcome in any of the other ports. So there are differences. It is smaller and we appreciate that a lot. But it is not necessarily the design that we'd like to see. One of the things that I continue to hear are maintenance issues. We hear it from your users all the time. Having the space, the building itself and the terminal overall maintained better would be appreciated by everybody. The people coming and going, the people who live around it. So trash pickup, cleanliness in general, and building something that is easily maintained for your own ongoing costs and the ongoing sort of aesthetic aspect of everything would be good. Nobody likes it when you're walking through a space that looks dirty or ill-kept, and it tends to lead to it becoming dirtier and less well-kept. Having the dog park off to the side is great, and having signage saying where that is will be very much appreciated. Having the Cocoons Park in better shape and well-maintained and being able to be cared for, I think should be looked at in its design and in its overall, how it can be kept up is very important. But yes, it needs to be green, and having as much green or refreshing space as possible, because when you walk across Steamship now, it is a big concrete desert, and it's not welcoming. So integrating green wherever possible, I think, is a good thing too. I wish I was saying that we loved the design, but I certainly don't think it particularly fits the village aesthetic very well. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Real quick, I want to get to a couple of questions from the chat. Matt Trumbull asked the overall dimensions of the ticket office building, please, length, width, height. Chris Leon, I know you probably have those memorized at this point, but could you remind everybody?
So the terminal building
The
is
terminal building, yes.
the terminal building is 123 feet in the north-south direction, is unchanged from the concept design, and it is 58 feet in the east-west direction, and it is 20 feet tall.
Thank you. And Nat also asked what other window options you had considered other than the round windows on both buildings. Said the round windows would seem to obscure the views versus rectangular windows.
Well, we've been looking at a number of fenestration options. The one thing I'll just point out that we've been also evaluating in addition to just aesthetics is the lead design has specific criteria on daylighting. So we're also looking at getting daylighting into all the interior spaces that require it.
Okay. Ellen Tully, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. On the design of the utility building on the south side, there seem to be windows on the south side at least I thought there were windows in the drawing, but I heard you say that there were no windows on the south side. And so could you clarify?
There are some windows on the south elevation at the waiting room on the far west end of the building, and the stair, I believe, also has windows on the east side. But along the main length of the south elevation, there are no rooms with windows.
The waiting room?
You mean the multi-purpose room?
Sorry, the multi-purpose room.
Okay. And that looks directly onto the south side.
It does currently, yes.
Okay, that's going to make me very uncomfortable to have people peering through their windows on my property. So maybe we could discuss that sometime. If there was some other way to lighting it without having clear windows so that they wouldn't be looking out directly.
We'll definitely look at that, Ellen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I presume to be Ted Fitzel or one of the Fitzels.
Okay, there you go. Okay, you're unmuted, I think.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to clear up something that came up at the first part of the meeting. As you know, the town of Falmouth owns from the bridge back to Knobska Road, and the Steamship Authority leases this property. At one time when we renewed the lease, we set up a committee made up of a Steamship Authority member, Bob Davis, a community member, Carol Wagner, and I, Albert Fitzel, represented the selectmen. At that point, we used the hammer we had of Falmouth owned the back lot, and we got the Steamship Authority to give us an 18 parking space parking lot. Now, since that's gone, we are not looking for more parking there, but if the Board of Governors continues to disrespect the selectmen, which is the governing body of their largest port, then I think the town should consider not leasing that and using it as a park. But we have to do something because twice the governors have denied ending the 530 vote, totally disregarding our local government. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Bumpus noted that Matthew had a point. So Catherine, you can unmute yourself if you haven't already.
Thank you, Sean. Just not to drag this out, but thank Arden and Jonathan and say just something briefly again about the park. You know, Googling really quick your landscape architect, not to throw any darts or anything, but it looks like they're a highly competent firm in, you know, municipal parks and architecture around, you know, large municipal structures. What we're really looking for is a small local park with character. I would just highly encourage that whatever architect firm you use for the landscape design at Cocoons Park, that they work closely with some sort of a small group of community members to actually make it something that is not just a, you know, easy place to run a leaf blower through to blow the cigarette butts to one side, that it's actually a welcoming space that actually has some character for the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. One other question that came in through the chat. What type are the type of trees on the diagram shown, or are they shrubs? I'm assuming those are probably just representative shrubs at this point, but I don't know if there's more detail to that, Chris and Leanne.
Which diagram are we talking about?
Don't know.
Maybe Rick Williams from IBI can just speak generally about the type of plantings we would be using on the site. Rick, are you?
Yep. It's Rick Williams, IBI Group, landscape architect. I mean, what we would be looking to introduce out there is native planting, mentioned earlier. I know that, you know, it's for various reasons, it's obviously a good choice. Easier with water, more durable in terms of the environment, local environment, local microclimate. We'd be, you know, looking to do some overhead canopy trees where we could to basically provide some additional shade in the summer months when the park would be highly used. But there would also be, where we need it, some screening material for, you know, for screening along some of the edges if needed. I've heard on a couple of occasions the desire not to do screening, obviously on the east side of kind of the east side of the parking lot in terms of screening views and things like that. So we'd be selective in terms of what we propose. I think we'd be looking for low maintenance, but we'd be looking for something that's not corporate, but is going to give kind of the village feel to kind of that space again, as well as the plaza.
Thanks, Rick. One other question from the chat before we get back to the raised hands about the space dedicated to telecom equipment. Isn't it off-site or cloud-based? Christine, could one of you address that?
So the main equipment is in SSA's Palmer Ave location, but each remote location has its own needs for local servers and equipment. Carlos, do you want to expand on that?
Yes, so that room also takes all the cabling within the building itself. So all the workstations themselves are hardwired. So they all get wired back to racks, and the racks have patch panels, and the patch panels will have switches mounted below them. So that's why the telecom rooms are required.
Thank you. Marie Larson asked about pedestrian access to the bus to the back lot, where the safe path would be, how people would access that.
We'd need to bring the plan up to show that.
Just a second.
So there are a number of crosswalks that go from the plaza to the third bus island. And then the third bus island is a passageway over to an accessible crossing to where the drop off is. And the same thing on the south side. There's an accessible path there that goes around to the front of the cars.
Okay.
Does that answer? I'm not sure. Does that answer the question?
I think so, Marie. If it doesn't, you can send a chat. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
Dan Doyle from the Martha's Vineyard Commission asked about measures that could be taken now that would enable a future transition to a charging infrastructure for vessels. Are there steps that could be taken now to enable that shift in the future?
For vessels or vehicles?
Vessels.
If I may. Dan, in terms of that, the study that we're doing, not only would we be looking at what the requirements would be for the vessels, but along with that would be what sort of infrastructure requirements we'd be needing, both on the mainland and on the islands as well. So until we complete what those requirements may need be for the vessels, it'd be premature on the terminal side to be.
That said, we are looking at integrating infrastructure for electric vehicles on the landside portion, which would include possible electric buses and passenger vehicles.
Jonathan Goldman's been waiting patiently with his virtual hand up. So, Jonathan.
Thanks, Sean. I had two questions. One was really for Rick Williams, I guess, who's the landscape architect of note on this call. If there are any new trees or green spaces or green, as Catherine Bumpus noted, are they all going to be planted in dirt or are they going to be in planters? Because I think mostly, because if the actual park is dimensional above shrubs, they won't survive. I'm just curious what that choice was. The other question, I think it's evaporated.
Well, let me answer this first question, and then if it comes back to you, you can always jump back in. So in terms of the Cocoons Park, I think we're going to be looking to elevate similar to what was out there previously in terms of using the granite block to get the elevation up to keep it as much as we can out of any kind of flood zone, in terms of soil and make sure that the drainage works well and we've got good under drainage under the planting so they don't choke the plants out. Obviously, we'll be integrating kind of elevated, kind of built-in planting, curbed if we need to, but also on the plaza itself, we're trying to get some green space in there as well. And that can be in the form of trees under, with using seating underneath it. But all of that would ultimately end up being kind of in some type of structured environment, given it's in the center of a plaza for containment probably purposes. But obviously we're trying to plant as much as we possibly can within natural soils or within an imported soil that is a good growing material to give these plants a chance to survive. It is a harsh environment. And we are looking for, obviously we're happy to take, thoughts and concerns and try to craft this park and this plaza with you guys. And if you have suggestions of material that you want to propose, please do. We're always open to it.
The only reason why I asked that was because I have experience on waterfront, and last week with those 60 knot gusts that came off of the bay. That doesn't usually happen in Woods Hole and on your face to the terminal area, but it was blowing stink and there were 4-foot rollers. So there's a lot of salt. Our windows were covered with salt. So I'm just saying that whatever this is, It's in an artificial environment. It's an artificial ecology. So I'm just very curious about long-term, how deep, you know, because once a flood comes up, which it will, you know, how impenetrable is the bulkhead to keeping the salt water away from that, what I think is could be a precious little jewel. But emphasis on little.
Yeah, little indeed. And I
The
think
other thing I was going to
That's
say
very-
was the circle windows. I agree with everybody who's sort of had a negative about it. It kind of reminds me of the Mystic Aquarium, where it is appropriate. I think it's, I don't know. The rectangular ones, it would go to, I think what somebody said about seeing through the building. I think it would give it a lot more, you know, view through, which I think is one of the things that the community really would like. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, I promised I would get to press questions at the end. There was one in the chat from Carrie Gentile with the Falmouth Enterprise asking about the size of Cocoon Park and will it be larger than it was before? Chris Leon, do you have any dimensions on the new park area versus what was there prior?
Well, what was there before was a taxi stand and a loading transfer bridge and a small garden along the edge. So yeah, it's a lot bigger. I don't know, Rick, do you recall the size of the overall rectangle?
Trying to remember the exact size. I feel like it was somewhere around 60 by 70, something like that. It's larger than the North Plaza there, but it's probably from the green space that you're seeing in this top picture, you know, 4 times the size of that area of green is probably about the limits to the full width of the park, but not that it's going to be fully green like that. Somewhere around 60 or 70 feet.
And Rich Salzberg, if you still have something, if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask.
Hi, thank you. 2 questions, if I may. The first is just in brief, if the architects could articulate how fire response might be contemplated in the landside design and the traffic flow. In other words, especially in the season, if it's a busy season, where the fire truck's going to go, if there's an emergency on the land side or the water side that requires firefighting capability.
We can go back to the site plan, Leon. So these buildings are equipped with sprinklers. So very unlikely that they're going to burn, although fire trucks might show up. So there's access on the south and the east sides of the terminal, as well as the north. And if buses are move forward, they also have access on the 4th side. The utility building has access all along the north side, and then from the employee parking lot along the east side. The only side it doesn't have access on is along the property line.
Is that laid out to a particular code, or is something different sort of metric for that?
Buildings don't, is your question, do buildings have to have fire truck access on all 4 sides?
Well, I meant, I suppose, just the terminal in general, but especially the land side. Is there some sort of guiding code for providing area for fire apparatus, or is it maybe not so much?
No, there is. In fact, I don't know, Nate, are you still on? Nate Russell. We have to unmute him. He's our traffic civil engineer.
I am.
There you go.
So there is the building code has a national fire code would apply to this, and we have looked at that from a standpoint of access, things like fire lanes that people are used to seeing around commercial buildings. We believe that the current layout as shown meets the fire code, and that's something we will be discussing with the local EMS, fire and emergency responders. Make sure they don't have any additional concerns, work through that process. But the intent is to provide clear access along the south, west, and north side of the terminal building and the plaza. And that should provide access in accordance with the code. And as Chris was saying, if there was a need to access the east side, the buses that are staged there have drivers in them and should be readily movable if there ever was a need.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. The other question I had was for the terminal building itself. I was wondering if you could speak to what kind of wind the building can resist, wind strength, and whether or not there's any place for the folks inside that building to go in the event of a tornado.
So the building will be designed to meet the hurricane impact requirements. I believe it's large missile impact testing. And it will not specifically be designed for tornadoes. I think that's not in the local code requirements, and the tornado protection is a much higher tier than what we're anticipating. That said, generally the primary structure and the stone walls will be more than strong enough, so where you run into code criteria on that regard is going to be the window and door assemblies. So what we're currently anticipating are hurricane impact rated window and door assemblies.
Thank you very much.
I did not have tornado questions on my bingo card for tonight, so congratulations, Rich. You surprised me. Ted Fitzel, you had your hand back up.
Yeah, I'd just like to make it clear that Cocoons Park is named for Sam Cahoon, a famous woods holer, and then was started by Dan Clark, another famous woods holer. And when it was there, it existed well with salt tolerant plants. And I'd like to see that it be restored and enlarged if possible. It wasn't a taxi stand, it was a park where people could sit down.
A lot of trees were cut down.
Thank you. Two quick questions from the chat. Jen Elliott asked about this, how this affected the Noshawn Ferry access area. Bob, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so as the project right now, the marine side of the project, we're rebuilding the wall adjacent to the Noshawn Trust building there. And as you can see, the slip 3 has been moved away from the Noshawn dock, so we don't anticipate any issues there.
And then one other question about the large unlabeled area between the terminal building and the central slip, what it is reserved for. It's for vehicle traffic exiting and entering the slips.
Just the turning radius.
The turning radius, yes. And I see in the chat that Eugenie has a question, so let me try and find her real quick. Oh. There you go, Eugenie, you're on.
Hi, hello, everybody. I was wondering if the impact of the present state of the exit from the third slip onto Railroad Avenue will be modified. That is presently a very large swath of macadam that has obliterated the definition between Luscombe Avenue and Railroad. And I saw in the materials that are going to be used, you talk about granite curbs. And I do believe that this, the way the trucks now exit onto Railroad, they are encroaching on town property. So I feel deeply, I should say, that the corner of those two streets be defined by those curbs and give back some definition to that area, which is currently obliterated by the macadam. I'm making myself clear. Because the way it is right now, it has completely lost its shape. And there used to be a triangle of brick right at that corner, which delineated that space, and that is not apparent right now. And while I'm at it, while I have this chance to speak, I'm interested in the design, but I still find the building much too large. And I also appreciate the waterside walk that I saw drawn on one of the designs. It goes from Cocoons Park to the first slip. I think that the bike park over here is a good idea to have it out of the streets. And that's a good thing. I would like to see images, mock-ups of the terminal building and of the utility building from different angles so that we can see what the impact on the environment is, because it's not clear enough for someone myself. And I'll notice that the utility building has gone 2,500 square feet is now 2,500 square feet larger than it was before, bringing it to 7,000 square feet, and that seems enormous. And I understand man's preoccupation with the visuals of the elevation there. And the idea of solar panels seems very good to me, though what Bill Roslansky was saying was that it was not efficient because they were too high. And I can't speak of that, but I'm glad that they're integrated. I was more skeptical about the way they are and spread out over here in the employee parking lot. But are they over cars, or what are they? How are they being installed there? And if I may cite a email that we SMART received this afternoon from John Gore, who considered that the LEED certifications that brought the plan up to certified, it was not high enough, was not environmentally sensitive. And finally, I'm shocked by the price tag of 31 million plus for this project. And I find that it's a kind of a spiral of consumption it forces the Steamship Authority to raise prices, to do more advertising, encourages development on the vineyard, brings in more traffic. And this all has to do with this size of the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenie. Kate, did you want to, I don't see anyone else with their hands up. Kate, did you want to have any closing thoughts?
Thanks, Sean. Seems like this was a productive meeting. We went on for a little over 2 hours. I think that this format where we could all see who else was here, even if you didn't speak up, I think just knowing that so-and-so was here was really helpful, and it helped generate a community conversation and discussion. There were some really good questions and suggestions. And although I took notes, I don't think I got all of them. I think it would be helpful if we, the Steamship Authority, made a list of what came through the chat, what came over the conversation, and because there were so many good suggestions that I think that we can integrate some of them into the overall schematics and going forward. I think that's it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, everyone, we're at 2 hours and rumbling stomachs. So thank you all for participating. We'll have a video of this, as I said, on our YouTube channel. We'll post it to the website and distribute it. And the presentation, it's slightly updated from what we posted on Friday. So I'll update that tonight or tomorrow as well. And we are at WH Terminal feedback@steamshipauthority.com, or you can email Bob or myself directly. So thank you all for being here this evening, and have a good night. Thank you.
You will.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.